Welcome to the Pulse Podcast, Pulse by the Tech Boy Media. They're calling it the most historic month in history, while the Tech Boy Media has been able to make grand changes and sweeping changes in history. Just April, April's always been such a historic month for us. In 2024, we of course have the historic summit, April 13th, 2024, when we went out to Baybrook Mall, often called Babbling Brook Mall, in the SSA LTW book and web series. And what happened there is that we were able to go to that mall and go places with someone, the first of its kind in the historic event for the agency in 2025. This was when the then most liked Instagram post was created with 20 likes. That like count has now been surpassed by, of course, the great Hazel's Truth. And I took a picture with her. That photo is now up with 68 likes. Speaking of, I got to meet Hazel's Truth and Taylor Sharp and Alyssa Black here at GCU. Taylor Sharp actually rode on my scooter. It was so amazing, there's so much aura on my scooter, so much aura surrounding me there. And now my photo with all of them together is now the second most liked photo in the Tech Boy Media history. So now let's go over to the techboy.org, where we have two topics that we got to talk about. We're going to talk about Super Tiny Football, the video game. We're going to talk about Gemini, and then we're going to react to some Mr. Mobile stuff because I've been extremely busy covering events for NHSC as well as the new GCU newspaper website, CNN Canyon News Now. I was out covering there today while the GCU women's football team played football. Kinda. I mean, it was a great game, great experience, but well, remember that time in high school when I covered the basketball team and they lost 121-24? But it's kind of what happened there. In any case, and my computer is so super laggy right now. There we go. Finally, it's loading here on the screen. That's the reason I'm using Restream here, because last time we were having all kinds of problems with OBS. We had to cut to our pre-taped segment because we could not get to our altered state segment. The altered state segment, which is actually broken containment from the internet, which I think is pretty interesting. So many people are telling me that they didn't follow me, but they saw the video of me talking about altered state. So I'd like to thank Megan Basham once again for creating this video. All my worlds almost collided once when Hazel and Taylor were here, and they could have been disastrous, but thankfully we were able to thread the needle, and nothing bad happened as of yet. It was almost a year ago when my cousin doxed me because she got mad about what I said on the internet. So, look how well that went for her. It didn't go that well for her, did it? Did it? I mean, you look at me in July, there were no Instagram videos, and now you look at me now, and I'm the top commentator online. Okay, like top 10. And by top 10, I mean I'm 10. In any case, let's talk about Super Tiny Football. This is a very interesting game. It's almost as good as Retro Ball. Some people are saying that. It's sort of like Retro Ball, but with better graphics. But unfortunately, you need to have internet access to play, unless you pay for these diamonds here, or as you can see on the screen. These diamonds allow you to play offline to skip the ads. Because most people know that if you put your phone into airplane mode, you can skip ads, except not in this game. It does not work like that. You have to play the ad to get access to the game. Anyway, Super Tiny Football has over 100,000 downloads with a 4.5 star rating. So it's a pretty well-rated game. And would I rate it well myself? Yeah, I think I would. The only problem is that the game's mechanics are kind of weird. When you're trying to run and swipe and do all of those things and throw, they're kind of weird. But as opposed to Retro Ball, we can only throw like maybe like 20, maybe 30 yards. You can throw really deep passes here. I've been able to hit maybe 30, 40-yard passes on here. And I have like a 3-ish, 4-star quarterback. I mean, you can look at the team stats here. This is the AFC Championship game screenshot, I believe. And you can see on the screen, my team is tactically worse than the Miami Dolphins, who are 8-9, have a worse record than the Houston Texans, 13-4 in the AFC South. When I was playing as Houston Texans, I started off as 1-4 and then went on an amazing run, kind of like the Texans did this season until they lost to the Patriots, the Super Bowl losers. But in any case, once I was able to figure out how to get the controls to work, I was very off to the races. As you can see on the screen, look at this. I was going super fast, being able to score all sorts of touchdowns. And it's so much more high quality than Retro Ball. I mean, even just from the screenshot, you can see that these players are not pixels on the screen. You have an actual field, and you can actually see the a yellow line for the first down. You can see how far of a run this was because the first down was down back at about the 40. right? And now I've already crossed my 30-yard line, so that's pretty interesting. Now, unfortunately, this does have some problems. You do not have any win-loss history for your team or for your coach. There's no such thing as coach history in there. It doesn't track how many super tiny bowls that you win. It doesn't track your achievements like scoring over 50 points in a game or having a perfect 100% passing rating as well, completion percentage as well. All these major milestones are glazed over. So Retro Bowl, if you're looking at that, yeah, sure, the graphics are a lot better in Super Tiny Football, but in Retro Bowl, you can see your entire stats is more built apt for dynasties. Replay is also only allowed on the scoring plays as well, but I think it's interesting. It's fine. I mean, you don't really need to replay everything. If you wanted to replay stuff, you can always screen record that. It's not like they save on Retro Ball. It's not like they save on Super Tiny Football either. So in any case, that's fine. I do like that on defense. Your defense can actually score. They can score a pick six. They can go get a scoop and score, whatever it is. You can't control them, but they can score. They've done that before. But you cannot fumble the ball, which I think is good, actually. In Retro Bowl, if your player is just slightly mad, he'll always be fumbling around, and he will come at the worst exact moments. I'm thinking about adding a Retro Bowl tab to this website where I can go through all my old Retro Bowl posts on the Retro Bowl subreddit and add this to the site. Of course, increase SEO and search engine optimization and have much better, more content onto the website, because I think that because I'm covering so much content and it's at sea, I was at church covering the president of the United States, and because I'm going to start Up Canyon News, obviously the school is almost about to end, but there's still important stuff that I need to be writing about, like the women's football team and exploits today. I'm going to move this website to a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, and then we'll have the podcast be the third article, and then we'll focus on that. We'll also focus on I need to renew my subscription to Adventures in Odyssey so I can talk about what's happening over there as well. And I also need to keep making videos on the internet as well. We got to keep pumping out this content. I mean, we have have had about a 10-week advantage, and we cannot allow this advantage to dissipate before us. I will become a great leader in the school. I'll become a great influencer, and we will not allow ourselves to be outcompeted by anybody. That will never ever happen again. We've squandered our leads before, and that is not going to happen. We are not going to lose our leads. We're not going to lose our connections, and we are not going to lose our power. In any case, let's get back to the game. The controls are very finicky. Throwing is easy, but changing direction is hard. I don't know why it says friction there. You have to swipe around the back of the screen to boost as you swipe. And in my testing, the kicking does not work at all. You can kick on the extra points, it works. I tried to kick a field goal, it does not work at all. You can draft these players, and as you can see from the stars, that's how good they are out of 5. So you want to have at least 5 stars. The next season, after going 13-4, I got the hang of the game, so I went 17-0 and won the Super Tiny Bowl again. Now the star rating that you have does not change. So despite me going 17-0, beating every team by point differential of 21, I was still in the power rankings towards the bottom. I would like to see some actual power rankings that are like, they change throughout the season. Sometimes people think that the Lions are going to have a good season. Last season, might have put them like in the top 10. Well, they were one of the worst teams in the league compared to the expectations last season. So the power rankings would have changed there. If that would have happened in this game, the Lions would have been, top 5, no matter how many wins or losses they had. And here's an example of the replay. You can see you get it from this angle. It shows the player that's on the screen, and he goes in and gets a touchdown. But as if I keep recording here, I don't tap off to stop the recording. What we see here on the screen, it show different camera angles of the replay. It's pretty interesting to see that nice little juke turn that we have from the player there. So it's pretty interesting how instant replay works on here as well. The graphics are, of course, more modern. You get 4 saves instead of 5, which is fine. It's a much more realistic team. You can see the scores here. And look at the point differential. So this is just in the regular season, not in the playoffs. Almost a 400-point differential. I was trying to do, I probably would have hit 400 if in the second to last game I wasn't running the ball incessantly. And then I realized, oh wait, I got to score like 40 points. Well, I couldn't score 40 points like that second to last game. 40 more points than the other team. I couldn't do that because I was running the ball, so too much time was coming off the clock because you have 2-minute, 2-minute 30, and 3-minute quarters. Now we got to talk about technology from this perspective. We are having so many problems with this. Like I said, I was covering lots of events for NHSC, and I was covering an event for the new Canyon News Now website, and my phone is just right. First of all, I have no idea how this happened. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera, but the camera is also one of the other bad things that's happening in this technological world. Just like nothing seems to be working out for me as well. This camera has intense amounts of lag for some reason. My phone is not built to be an ultra phone. It just isn't. Yeah, should we have 512 gigabytes of storage? I should have got a terabyte because my phone is filling up. It's about like 509, hovers around that as well. I like to go out and interview people, right, for the Pulse podcast and for Canyon and for all these ventures that I've been up to, plugging in the mic and doing stuff like that. One thing here that do want to notice is that Samsung, look, if you notice that the mic is not getting any audio when it's plugged in, I don't know, maybe you should use the phone's internal mic. I lost perfectly good interviews with Taylor Sharp and Gianna Carson and Hazel Stewart because, the mics didn't work. The video was great, but the mics didn't work, unfortunately. Piece of trash, crap, probably a Chinese mic. So that's one of the problems as well. But this phone was getting super hot in Arizona sun today. The battery life is abysmal. I mean, it is dying. I had to go all the way down to Best Buy, buy a power bank. I used up the entire power bank, which was at 20,000 milliamp hours, and it was at 25% when I bought it. I used the entire power bank, and by the time I got back to the school, it was already at 15%. The phone was about to die at that point, which is ridiculous. I mean, I was honestly considering if they had the OnePlus 15 in stock, just buying that because it's ridiculous how this phone is not able to survive an entire day. Actually, I'm doing like some photography and live streaming, not live streaming, live tweeting the games and stuff. It is a phone. It's being able to last this long. This long. I mean, it is utterly ridiculous, especially when I need it most. And when I was doing like the zoom in and trying to take pictures and photography, it had some sort of lag. Maybe it was heat induced. Maybe it's just from the camera application itself. It just is not the ultra phone that we need. I do not need this phone is failing it when I need me most. The battery life is failing. The cameras were kind of failing. Uh the back of the glass is failing at this point. It's just ridiculous. I don't know why it's doing this. This is an ultra phone that needs to have ultra capacity. I was looking at my 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack. I was thinking, wow, this is not even that thick. Let me see if I can have it here. I mean, this isn't even that thick. Like, I would take a phone that is this thick, or a 15,000 milliamp hour phone that's this thick, and you don't have the foam stuff on the inside. I would take that. I would take that deal. It's so much more useful and so much better than having a super slim phone that is not, the best. And I think that if someone came out with a phone that wasn't, I mean, my phone for some reason was slowing down. It's actually slowing down. The Instagram edits, we talked about this, maybe it's just a coded bad application, was crashing when I was trying to do my video edits, quick video edits for obviously Canyon. And Motion Ninja has this weird problem where if you put two videos together, you're not supposed to see any sort of jump cut. It cuts to black and then it cuts back to the video. I don't know if that's wrong with the phone. I don't know if that's wrong with the editor. It could be something like that. But I mean, the phone just felt kind of slow-ish, like sluggish. When Samsung needs to get better at this, it should not be doing this. And no, don't say, oh, you're getting an iPhone. No, the iOS operating system sucks. It is not a good operating system, and I'm not going to get an iPhone for that. It's one. The iPhone batteries are much smaller than Samsung batteries. I think the iPhone, maybe it's at 5,000 or two. Did you guys hear that? In any case, was that my phone? I don't want to be blowing up on stream over here. In any case, it might be 5,000 milliamp hours. I'm not sure they don't really release that kind of information. They do release, I do think it was about like 4,200 milliamp hours. It's not that good. Now, I did have a phone that had that, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold. You guys heard that, right? That's not a fire alarm. In any case, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 had that, but it was a work phone, and I only used the Wi-Fi. I didn't use the cellular modem, so it lasted a long time. I'm not sure how well it lasts at my current use. Well, actually on mobile data. I want to, let's speed run through this podcast just in case that keeps happening, the building burns down. I want this podcast to go well. All right. Anyway, Gemini has come to the Mac, and what's my stance on this? Why do we need an application? But it's just a web. Okay, this is ridiculous. What is that beep? Is that the TV? Can you guys see this on the screen? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, it just keeps beeping. We're just gonna ignore that while we show this on the screen. Shut up. As I told some protesters, shut up. Anyway, this is the Google Gemini has come to Mac. Why? Like, I guess it's good, but I mean, you have instant access via a keyboard shortcut, and you can type into it. Obviously, it's not using the power of the Mac. It's not using the M5 chip, so it's not really special, right? It's just a tab that's that's the problem that's we've had in computing. It's just that all of our applications have just become browser tabs. The Discord application is a browser tab. Slack application is a browser tab. So now the greatest invention, the greatest advancement in technology that we've seen thus far, at least in the history of this company, artificial intelligence, is now being relegated to, of course, a browser tab. So people are talking about how artificial intelligence is at the forefront of, I guess, Macs are at the forefront, sorry, of artificial intelligence. I'm not sure how true that is. I don't have a Mac, but they're saying that it's because they have the chips, and I think so. The M5 chip. I really wish that they didn't invent that, so that Windows would remain supreme. I heard someone talking about, oh, Windows is dying, and they made up some fake screenshot about this age verification it's coming on Windows, that they wouldn't let them out of S mode. These Linux people, I don't know what they're doing. They act like Windows is so bad now. I'm not going to totally defend Windows here. My computer here has been so slow and sluggish. I don't know if it's a computer, I don't know if it's a camera, but that's been slow as well. I try to open up some new tabs, that's been slow. And would it be fast on Linux? I'm not really sure about that. I mean, maybe, but I'd also have to put up with annoying software like LibreOffice instead of Word. And I wouldn't be allowed to use, every program I'm using, like the EB camera. Windows is such a better operating system. It has much more applications. I just don't. I like Chrome. I don't want to use weird Firefox and just like using Linux is kind of weird. I don't want to have to use that. But in any case, let's get to Canyon News. This is the article here, and right after this, I'm going to go over to the website and write an article about the first women's football game, the first day of the women's football tournament. Unfortunately, they fell to 0-3. Anyway, here's our Canyon News exclusive where I interviewed the great Harrison Plummer. He is a pitcher for GCU's baseball team, not the baseball team, but the club baseball team. And this is essentially what the website is. So it's not just going to be a sports website, but that's the story I've been able to pick up. I'm going to go in and interview people about all sorts of things because this school needs to have some sort of a newspaper. Also, we need to be able to call press conferences. There is such a beauty in a press conference. People need to be able to call those around here. And when these elections start heating up and ramping up, because there's gonna be some actual elections here. This is going to be the decade. I guess we're going to finish out the 2020s, and it's going to be the decade of the tech boy media from 2026 to 2030 or 2029 or whatever. It's going to be the decade of the tech boy media, and I guarantee you this: that America is going to remember my name. The school is going to remember my name, and we are going to go down in history as one of the greatest, obviously, presidents of all time, but also bring news to the school. I did that in high school. We're going to do that back in college as well. And I mean, is this tied into some sort of political ambition?
There's no going back. No setup. Just say hello.
ASPCU, but yes, it is. Am I going to call press conferences on myself? Absolutely. Before we sign off for now, we're going to turn to When Phones Were Fun, HTC Universal 2005. From Mr. Mo, we're going to be reacting to what he has to say about this. Hope you guys can see this on the screen. All right, hopefully my laptop can handle a tab and streaming at the same time. But no, historic.
Sponsored by Surfshark. In 2026, shrinking a laptop to handheld size requires a folding phone, some kind of stand, a keyboard, and a mouse. At least $2,000 worth of gear carried in a minimum of 2 pockets.
I mean, I don't know. They'll be selling those phones for $1,700 at Best Buy today, and you can get a keyboard for I mean, I'm pretty sure you can get a keyboard and mouse combination for under $200. Let's be honest here. I mean, that's actually under 200.
20 years ago, as with many things, the Pocket laptop was much simpler.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, let's look at the screen. It's a lot smaller. If we're going to do screen to body ratio, I'm going to go like what, 60-40? That might be generous. 70-30. At least, I mean, the fold, I mean, compared to this, is basically 100% screen.
Only better. And worse. It's 2005, and a company that would come to be known for its high-tech computers just dropped the most ambitious one of its time. This is the HTC Universal.
But that's a pretty cool form factor. I'm not going to lie about that. I mean, I do think that these companies create much more interesting phones as well, but it's kind of like the chicken sandwich meme where they whine about capitalism and how the chicken sandwich all looks the same. Well, I mean, there's only multiple ways you can make a chicken sandwich. It's two pieces of bread and a piece of chicken. I mean, I'm not really sure what they were expecting to happen. That's the same thing about smartphones. When we all use the same applications, we've gone through this before, we don't have to do it again. The top applications are all the same social media applications. We all do the same things with them, sending emails, taking photographs. And the best form factor is exactly the form factor that we have now. Okay, it's not some sort of big conspiracy. The reason that we have the form factor that we're in now, the reason is because it is the best. It's the one that people want to use. That's how phones work. It's why I reviewed the Cosmo communicator. That's why phones like that did not take off. You know, the reason phones with keyboards didn't take off is because people didn't want them.
If that name doesn't ring a bell, maybe you knew it by another one. The O2 XDA exec. The
Nope, never heard of that.
iMate Jazzjar. Or the T-Mobile MDA Pro. That last variant is what I stumbled upon in my archives when filming the prior episode of this series. Thanks again to Charles Goen for the donation. But I really couldn't cover it because as a German market device, it shipped with a quartz keyboard that I'm just terrible at typing on. But I couldn't get the damn thing out of my head. I was like obsessed with it. So, when I saw an eBay listing for Vodafone's version of the HTC Universal, I'm
gonna have to cut the quality.
I went for it, and I've spent the last week toting it around town, reliving the Windows Mobile life 20 years later. We've talked a lot about how the mid...
It's a very interesting looking phone there. I'm not really sure what much you could do on it. I mean, it looks like texting would be a pain. I don't even know what are they trying to do with this. I was talking about the previous phone, but I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing? This looks like a toy from a 2005 Spy Kids movie. Like, what is this? What are we doing?
Mid-aughts was an insane period for mobile phones, and the Universal blended the most ambitious elements of the time. 3G, a full keyboard, a double hinge, a big display, and a Windows operating.
This reminds me of when Liz has a phone and Spike is talking about his phone. He's like, "Oh yeah, guys, I got internet, 3.5-inch screen, and a full QWERTY keyboard." Maybe this is the phone that he was using.
System into a single, kind of super insane smartphone. I'm pretty sure I can trace my current Pocket laptop.
Yeah, so Matt Walsh, this was actually made in 2005. So do you want to blame the decline of civilization on HTC, or is it because the iPhone is a touchscreen?
Top obsession back to devices just like this, which came on the scene back when I was still crisscrossing my college campus, my backpack straining under the weight of a desktop replacement PC that weighed almost 10 pounds.
Wow, and you know, that thing would be completely worthless today. My phone has much more processing power than that. It's really interesting because back then, you know, they were running actual software on those computers.
The idea of condensing that capability into a 10-ounce portable that fit into a pocket? Well, it was compelling not just for its obvious orthopedic benefits, but because it made me feel like the future I'd been awaiting for a lifetime's worth of Star Trek oversaturation was finally around the corner.
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably the type of phone that like the military would have, and the cheerleader would all have the Motorola Razr, which was an overrated phone. I've always talked about this. The Motorola Razr is one of the most overrated phones in history.
Of course, it really wasn't, in part because the appetite was still limited for such an expensive phone, and partly because we hadn't yet
Sorry, it says it's 1,418 euros. But I don't speak communist, so I don't know how much that is.
figured out a proper user interface. But let's talk about what's here before we tackle what isn't. HTC recognized that to be both phone and PC, the Universal needed a one-handed mode. You know, you couldn't expect a customer to crack open a clamshell as big as this just to check a text message. So it used one of my favorite things, a twist and flip hinge, similar to the one on Samsung's A600.
You know what also flipping away from Legally Blondes, the movie where they look down and they flip their hair, and then they can convince any boy to do what they want. Because as everyone knows, if a girl flips her hair, then you do what she says. That has never worked on me, ever, and it will never work on me. Okay, I don't care how many people flip their hair at me. I will not allow hair to be used to manipulate me.
That allowed the phone to be closed with the 3.6-inch display facing outward to produce a semblance of the large-screen smartphone we all now know and, tolerate.
Oh, I like smartphones. Smartphones. I was talking to someone today. He didn't even know that this phone did not have a headphone jack. How do you not know your smartphone in and out? Also, do you not look at the top and bottom of your phone? Come on, man.
It was a touchscreen, but in this time before the LG Prada and original iPhone, it used resistive technology, sensitive to pressure, not capacitance. And so it worked best with the included stylus. This
That was pretty cool. That nice swipe right there. Wow. Some more.
was also the era of buttons, and with the exception of BlackBerry, nobody loved buttons more than HTC.
They're bringing back with the iPhone buttons and the camera control button. I actually think they're having more buttons on the phone.
They're strewn all across the enclosure, 13 of them on the sides and face, addressing everything from calling to camera, SMS to soft reset. And none of them is really great. You accidentally hit the ones on the side all the time, not all of them wake the device up, and
that would actually be pretty useful. I have a soft key shortcut to record stuff because I'm a reporter. Having a dedicated recorder hardware key?
Power button is in exactly the wrong place, down on the bottom. But it was early. We were still figuring it out, and it was often easier to get used to the idiosyncrasies of these keys than it was to use that resistive touchscreen. And that was also true of the 62 buttons you found when you opened it up and set it down on its little rubber footies.
It's pretty high tech, pretty doable.
HTC crushed it with this keyboard. The buttons are big and slightly pillowy, which helps delineate each one despite the lack of any separation. And the switches have a clicky tactility that I, of course, appreciate. And of course, it gives you all the shortcuts, modifiers, and alternate characters you could ask for on a machine that offered the entire Microsoft Office mobile suite. So here's the part where I tell you I typed this whole script on the Universal, right? No. As much as I love the concept of clacking out a few thousand words in laptop mode, the reality is that at this size...
I used to do something like that. Not on this phone. I did a view on the Cosmo Communicator from the Cosmo Communicator, and I used my phone for an entire week without using a computer when I was in school. Except for school computer they provide us to use.
The most comfortable way to use this thing is to type with your thumbs. Even at the time, the surging popularity of Blackberries and Trios was making this clear. You just have more space to work with when there are only 2 fingers to worry about instead of 10. And HTC's future phones would reflect this. The QWERTY smartphones that succeeded the Universal were almost all side-sliding jobs, meant to be used in the hand rather than on a desk. Which, from one point of view, is a shame. Because I think Windows Mobile is a lot easier to deal with in a desktop context.
That's fair, but when you're standing in a coffee shop, you can't really use your phone like that. If you're going to be at a desk, you can just use your
With the phone on a table, its stereo speakers pointed at me, its LEDs blinking with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi signals, its little webcam pointed at my face in case I want to make a video call, rare even on laptops at the time.
That's pretty cool. And I think that video calls are actually pretty cool. I know people hate them, but I mean, it's actually pretty high tech technology right
My expectations are properly set. My brain looks at this and says, oh, computer. And in 2005, with 4 out of 5 computers running Microsoft software, Windows was the norm. I was lost without a start menu. I'll be honest, I don't miss this particular era of Windows Mobile, though. Even running a capable Intel chipset, backed up by a then typical 64 megs of RAM, the Pocket PC experience was characterized by a lot of waiting for the OS to catch up with what you wanted to do. Now, to be completely fair to the phone, the Model I eBay has been upgraded from Windows Mobile 5 to version 6.1, and it sports an SD card absolutely loaded with custom software, which I'll show you in a second. I bet that slowed things down a touch. And to make sure I wasn't bringing my modern biases to the table, I dove into some reviews from the period. My friend Judy Stanford, writing for The Gadgeteer, reported that the phone never felt particularly sluggish, and Gavin's Gadgets has an epic blog post about using it as a PC replacement for 2 weeks. Again, this is in 2005. You really could do so much with these things. But I also...
Yeah, and I think that people just, kind of forgot about that. They don't want to push the limits of their technology.
Speak from experience. In 2006 and again in 2008, I dipped my toe into the Windows Mobile waters with the HTC Apache and HTC.
I probably would have been a Windows Mobile user back then. Let's be honest. Probably would have been a Windows Phone user even when Android.
Titan, and I never made it to a full year with either one. They were just too slow, too clunky.
Oh, I forgot about BlackBerry.
Compared to the snappier and more intuitive experiences available from Palm and BlackBerry. Oh, and no matter how many of these...
Ooh, this reminds me of Drake and Josh or Zoe 101. See, this is the kind of cool technology that we want to see.
Kitschy
like
filters you could throw on, or how massive the manufacturers made their megapixel branding. Pocket PC cameras always
Oh my gosh, that's...
let me down. Still, I didn't want to put the Universal back into the archives without correcting the frustrating failure of my i930 video. I needed to install some third-party apps. As I mentioned, the phone came with quite a few, and I plumbed my college-era smartphone archives to add some more via the SD card. Aren't standards great? Now, plenty of this stuff will seem pedestrian today, because it addresses functionality like GPS navigation or system backups that modern phones offer out of the box.
Well, Android doesn't really offer that good of a system backup, let's be
It's
honest.
a good reminder of how powerful it was to have a third-party app ecosystem, even before we called them apps. When Microsoft Office didn't want to open an Excel file, a third-party program called Foxit Reader opened the PDF version. When I wanted to add a Google search bar to the Today screen, I could just do that. I brushed up on my Borg implant irritation treatments with something called the Australian Medicines Handbook, and I can barely describe what an epic relief it is to game on a vintage phone. I'm sure.
I mean, I think, what? They have an actual monopoly on here? Like, I think some of these games, because they were emulating board games and actual games, like ping pong and the like, were better than the games
You had
we
to
have
shell out
today.
buku bucks for some of them. This hand-mark edition of Monopoly apparently went for $30 at the time. But once you paid, you just played. No loot boxes or pop-up ads
$30.
to corrupt your
I mean, that's expensive now. I mean, back then, bro, you could probably buy a
experience.
house.
Man, I miss this. And if you didn't want to spend the money, hey, and there was always Dope Wars. You see, Motorola i930, this is all I wanted. In a time before mobile tech became a commodity, when many of us were still almost in awe of the humble dumb phone's ability to connect us to anyone we cared about at any time, the HTC Universal was an even bolder promise. That through 3G and a familiar form factor, it could connect us to the entire internet, while looking simultaneously futuristic and somehow
Wow, just feels so impressive, guys. And some people, back then they were excited. Now, they're always whining about stuff like
important,
this. Still.
commanding a BlackBerry-like corpo respect, but with about 1 million more features. The Universal engendered the kind of loyalty few devices do. Channel viewer Jonathan told me he used his for 5 years, even making a habit of using remote desktop to control his home computer through it.
Wow,
And its
cool.
place in geek history was cemented when 6 years after release, somebody ported Android to it, as was the style at the time. HTC's mobile division as we knew it is no more, having been largely absorbed into Google's Pixel unit, and Windows Mobile was replaced by the ill-fated Windows Phone, survived today only by a handful of Android launchers aping its excellent aesthetic. But both the phone and the operating system stand as monuments to a time when buttons were real. The future
Should I do Windows Mobile launchers for a week? Yeah, I think I'll
of
do that.
mobile seemed like an extension of the PC instead of vice versa, and phones were fun.
Wow, guys. Well, thank you guys for tuning into the Pulse Podcast. I guarantee you this, that we're going to have some much more interesting and amazing guests come onto the show. Make sure you subscribe to Canyon News. God bless. Tech Talk to you later. And always remember that we are always going to win. We are never going to surrender. We will never give up, no matter who it is and no matter what the threat is. God bless. Tech Talk to you later.